Welcome, everyone. This is Liz Christofferson with Empower Consulting Group. On behalf of Direct Pay, I would like to welcome all of you to this wonderful presentation we have this morning by Barbara McNichol. I'm going to share with you a little bit about Barbara so you understand the value that you're going to receive today, but I just want to cover a little bit of housekeeping. So first of all, the session is being recorded. If you have not muted your phone or your system, please be sure to do so. If you have a question or a comment, you can raise your hand or type it into the chat box. I will be watching out for that as we go forward. Direct Pay is one of the most fabulous companies. If you have used their services or you're thinking about affiliating with them, I have been a client for many, many years. They handle our merchant card services. They handle our online shopping carts. If you really want to create a powerful and successful online business and you want somebody else to handle the details of the payments, they're definitely the go-to company to use. It's quick, it's easy, they have people who will help you, who will strategize with you, and of course they offer these wonderful learning programs from time to time so you can learn more about the experts that are part of their database. So I want to share with you a little bit about Barbara McNichol today. She is an amazing and talented expertpreneur, and she's going to share with us about strengthen everything you write. Would being able to write better improve your productivity? Absolutely. I know for myself, sometimes I get caught up with what are the right words and phrases to use to express myself in a creative way that inspires people to action. That's why business people turn to our guest today, Barbara McNichol, for her expertise in helping them learn what professional editors know so you can apply them yourself. For 2 decades, our presenter, Barbara McNichol, has been on a crusade to curb the tide of misused words. She does that while editing nonfiction manuscripts through her workshops. She has also created a word choice guide called Word Tripperz, which you'll learn more about soon. Today, she's eager to share with you a wealth of business writing skills you can use forever. So let's welcome Barbara McNichol. Thank you so much, Barbara, for being here today. We're so grateful and appreciative to have you share your brilliance. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Liz. And the word expertpreneur, oh my gosh, what a juicy word that is. I'll have to be sure to keep using that one. I like it. Let me start by sharing the agenda for our webinar today. We're going to start with whack wordiness. Oh my gosh, what the heck does that mean? We're going to talk about setting your objectives. This is a planning tool before you even write your first sentence. Then we're going to pursue a parallel path to add rhythm and cadence to everything you write. We're going to talk about how to punctuate, proofread with fresh eyes. And then the last part, match the word to the meaning. What could that mean? First of all, when we're talking about word clutter, we're talking about something that Strunk and Wright wrote about in the 1930s. I remember when I was in the corporate world, our CEO gave everyone in the communications department a copy of this book, The Elements of Style, and it's been a classic for all this time. Anyway, they talked about word clutter being the leeches that infest the pond of prose, sucking the blood out of words. Oh my gosh, that is drastic. So the antidote to word clutter is whacking wordiness, and I've got a whole lot of ideas for you to get rid of word clutter by whacking wordiness. For example, we want to get rid of extraneous phrases, and I've got a few here to share with you, and examples go with them. So for example, it's all about the fact of the matter is, the fact of the matter is that it's unwise to go out carousing. Better, it's unwise to go out carousing. So the fact of the matter is kind of extraneous. It's got lots of clutter, right? The next one is intended to, is designed to, is meant to. For example, he gives a workshop designed to teach writing skills. Do we need the word designed in there? Not really. He gives a workshop that teaches writing skills. We're being more direct. Then, how many sentences get started with there is and there will be? For example, there will be many managers attending the class. Better, many managers will attend the class. So if you find yourself starting a sentence with there is, there will be, pay attention. Probably you don't need it. You can streamline it a bit more. Here are some more. In regard to, seek additional websites in regard to your industry. Better, seek additional websites in your industry. In this case, do we need in regard to? Nope, and we rarely do. How about is going to? Now we use this phrase a lot in the spoken word. It's very common, but in business writing in particular, it's extraneous. We can be much more direct than that. He is going to be a key contributor. He will be a key contributor. And then third one here, in order to, add keywords in order to describe the new position. Better, add keywords to describe the new position. So again, if you find yourself using these phrases, question it. Do you really need it? Probably 9 times out of 10, you do not. Here's my all-time favorite. The reason why is that, when a simple because will suffice. So what do we have? We have 5 words. We have 1 word. 5 words, 1 word. That's a lot of clutter. Gone. So look for opportunities to declutter your writing by whacking wordiness. You know, there's oftentimes when we have a report or a description or even something online and people ask us for 100 words. And 101 is not acceptable. It has to be 100 or less. So suppose you work it and work it and work it and you get it down to 120. Well, what do you look for to get rid of that extra 20 that doesn't fit, that doesn't belong? Well, you look for those extraneous phrases, but you also look for wobbly words. Really, some, much, very, that. These are 5 wobbly words that kind of have a wobbly meaning, and they certainly don't add a lot to the sentence. Let me give you some examples here. I really think it's time to go. I think it's time to go. Really doesn't do much in that sentence, and because we're writing, not speaking, it really doesn't add. And it's overused. People overuse it all the time. How about some? We rely on some long-standing methods. Let's be specific. We rely on 10 long-standing methods. Give the reader more information. Some is just kind of wobbly and sitting there and not that helpful. How about much? Twitter reaches a much larger audience than newspapers. Is much adding much to that sentence? Not much. So if you find yourself using the word much, take it out, question it. Chances are you don't need it. Very. I would say, my gosh, it's so close. We grab it all the time. It's probably the most overused word in the English language. Get ready to do a very good job. Let's be more descriptive. Get ready to do an extremely good job, or something that gives more information than that little word that just is sitting there doing not much. And the word that. Often you can delete the word that. Find information that you can apply easily. Find information you can apply easily. Streamline your writing. I would say probably 8 times out of 10, you can delete that in a sentence. And when we're talking about that, please, 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 my pet peeve, honestly, don't use that when you're referring to a person. You want to talk about the girl who plays the piano, not the girl that plays the piano. Listen for it. This is incorrect, used incorrectly a lot, but especially in your writing. Do not depersonalize people. Use who when you mean a person. Well, I really want to emphasize that. I feel strongly about that one for sure. Also, you want to question if you're using what I call decide to verbs. See our first example, I decide to make a cake. Well, what's the more important verb in that sentence? Not the deciding part, but the making a cake part. So streamline it and just say, I make a cake. How about the second one? He starts to talk fast, or he begins to talk fast. If you find yourself using start and begin, question it. Chances are you can eliminate it. He talks fast. Unless, of course, the beginning is an important piece. But in this case, I would say fast or talking is the more important verb. So let's eliminate the extraneous one. How about she tries to pick it up? Well, if you try and you try and you try, it means you never succeed. So what is your meaning here? If she, in fact, picks up the coffee cup, then she picks it up. There's no trying. So find if you find yourself the word try, question it. Also, what's often unnecessary is when you start a sentence with, I think, I feel, I believe. Yes, you are the writer. Therefore, the reader automatically knows that that's what you're feeling or believing or thinking, unless you want to use it for emphasis every once in a while. So question it if you find yourself doing that. As an editor, these are the kinds of things I take out often. Now, gosh, another great way to whack wordiness is to replace a phrase with a single word. Here are a couple of examples. Instead of saying, in reference to the book, you would say, about the book. 3 words, 1 word. 3 words, 1 word. How about a great number of fans? You could say many fans. 4 words, 1 word. Or even better, specific, you could say 101 fans if you know the number. So if you find yourself using these longer phrases, can you chop them? Look for ways to do that. Here are a few more. I arrived ahead of schedule. I arrived early. There, we've chopped a few words out of that. During the time that we were waiting, while we were waiting. So we've got 4 words down to 1 word. Remember our example. Suppose you only have 100 words and 101 won't cut it. These are the kind of things to look for to whack wordiness. Also, I recommend looking for ION nouns. When I talk to author groups, they especially like this tip. It's such a good one. So instead of saying, the doctor did an examination of my lungs, you would say, the doctor examined my lungs. Saying the same thing, but making it shorter. So we've got an ION word that we were able to change to a verb. Same with make a decision. It becomes decide, or the reorganization of becomes reorganize. Just take a moment and jot down an example that comes to your mind. For example, the celebration of becomes celebrate. How about that? So again, I encourage you to look for ways to shorten your sentences by doing this. In addition to ION nouns, look for MENT nouns. For example, the judgment of becomes judge. The employment of becomes employ. The enjoyment of becomes enjoy. Can you think of another? Just jot it down if you can, just to play the game with me. How about acknowledgement? The acknowledgement of becomes acknowledge. So when you go back and you reread what you've written, circle any of those ION and MENT nouns and ask yourself, can I change it to a verb in this sentence? That will help you whack wordiness. My colleague Diana Boer, who's written 47 books, she says, Think of these extra words as layers of onion skin before you get to the usable part. Peel them from your writing. That's what we're going for, peeling the onion here. Another way to think of clear, concise writing is to get rid of any repeated words. Here's an example. Following a new process, we followed the techniques in the book. What have we done here? We've used the word follow close together. So how would we fix that? Pretty simple. Following a new process, we adopted the techniques in the book. Now, often when we're working on screen, we don't catch those kinds of things. And often it's easier just to say them out loud, and you can hear the follow maybe more readily than you can actually see it. So take time to do some reading out loud, particularly for those highly sensitive pieces. Then you will catch the follow mistakes. Also, I would recommend, if you find yourself writing long-winded sentences where it takes more than a breath or two to read it, then the rule of thumb would be no more than 21 words per sentence. Some people say 12 words for business writing. I suggest 24 should be your max. Oops, 21 should be your max. So if you have more than 21 words, what do? Chop it into 2. You whack the extraneous phrases and wobbly words like we just talked about. You turn noun phrases into active verbs. And I suggest looking for who clauses. Here's an example. Dee Smith, who is our new manager in the department, just had surgery. Pretty long-winded. How can we shorten it? Dee Smith, comma, our new department manager, comma, just had surgery. So we eliminated that who is piece and streamlined it a little bit and whacked wordiness in the process. Now the same is true for which clauses. The report, which we finished, is on your desk. How can we streamline it? We put the finished report on your desk. Look at it there. Nice, neat, tidy, streamlined. Much, much better. Much better. So chop long-winded sentences using these techniques. Also, I recommend avoiding pompous phrases. You know, with the spoken word, we're able to use gestures and intonations. People can tell by the tone of the voice if it's kind of playful or not meant to be serious. But boy, we don't have that in the written word nearly so easily. So these are the kind of phrases that can get us into trouble and maybe look like we're a little arrogant or pompous. Things like, not to mention, and why are you mentioning it? Or, no offense, but. Often the word but negates everything that follows but, negates what came before it. So be careful. If I may say so, well, this is like asking permission. You are the writer. You have permission. So that can come across not quite the way you want. In my humble opinion, again, that could be misinterpreted. I would avoid that phrase. How about to tell the truth? Well, does that imply you haven't been telling the truth until now? Careful. Watch that one. How about it goes without saying? Then why are you saying it? Holy man. So watch out for these pompous phrases because they often don't help your writing and they can get in the way. Here's my all-time favorite, and it's the phrase, in other words. Honestly, people like using that phrase a lot, and it for me is a red flag because I look at it and I say, if you're writing a mediocre sentence, you have to follow it up with, in other words, and clarify what you just wrote, maybe it's better to go back and look at that first sentence and say, how can I strengthen it? How can I make it better? So make this phrase a red flag for you too. Figure out if you can make that first sentence strong so there's no need for a clarifying follow-up sentence. Make sense? Now here's a mini piece of homework for you. It won't take very long, but have some fun with it. You want to dig out something that you've written and select the longest paragraph. Then count the words in that paragraph and rewrite it, revise it, reducing the number by 1/3. Use all the things we just talked about to reduce it by 1/3. So if you start off with 99 words, you'll end up with 66 words or fewer. How about that? So play with it, experiment with it. We do this in the workshop that I do. I call it a word shop, actually, and we take some time to go through this exercise, and people get to see for themselves how much they can streamline and tighten their own writing just by doing this. The bottom line on this, honestly, is you don't want to make your readers work too hard. If your piece comes across as long-winded and tedious and hard to plow through, guess what? They don't take the time to do that. So that's the why. We want to streamline it so people will read it easily, quickly, and not get bogged down or not put it aside. Make sense? So this might be a good time for questions. Do we have any questions, Liz? Okay.
Thanks, Barbara. You're giving us a lot of really wonderful information. So let me just check to see if we have any questions from the audience. I don't see anything just yet, but I guess one of the things that I would like to ask you is, you know, when you're writing something, when you're crafting something, and what you shared about the words that we choose to use totally resonates with me. Do you have any thoughts or ideas for, like if you're working on something that's really lengthy, let's say you're writing copy for your website or you're writing copy for a series of email campaigns, how do you create the work, look at the work, and then come back to it and edit?
Well, I would say one rule of thumb would be, back to the long-windedness, short words, short sentences, short paragraphs. And being able to say things out loud is so helpful. Let me give you an example of that. I put out an e-zine called Word Tripper of the Week, and about 6 months ago I decided to, in addition to putting it out in the written form, I would also put it out in the audio form. So as I was doing the audio, reading off the written form, I found ways to streamline it and streamline it even more just by listening to it and figuring out ways that certain words just didn't need to be there, and playing with it and experimenting with it. And now I find it shorter, sweeter, punchier.
Oh, I like that. I really like that. We actually have a question from Amy. So Amy, thank you so much for sharing with us today. Her question says, what does it mean to have passive writing, and do you have examples of how to fix this?
Well, passive writing is contrasted with active writing, and you want to use active verbs as much as you can because it's more direct. So the example, the doctor examined my lungs, would be an active sentence. My lungs were examined by the doctor would be kind of in reverse. So the person who's doing it should ideally come first to make it a strong active sentence. Now that's not to say passive is wrong, but it's just not as strong. So if you find yourself using is and was and by in a sentence, take a look and see if you can reverse it and make the subject do the action. Put the subject first, then the verb. Does that help?
Correct. That's wonderful. Thank you. We actually have a couple more questions. I'd like to make sure we take time for them right now. Captain Jim wants to know, with a sentence with more than 21 words, make 2 sentences. Would that be the same for fiction writing?
Fiction writing can be a little bit different. because if you look at good examples of fiction, oh my gosh, they take a lot of liberties with long-winded sentences, and they work. And they work.
Yes.
But I would say back to business writing in particular, be more careful about that, because the long-windedness does make a difference. When you're reading fiction, you're more at leisure. You're not moving on fast as necessarily, but in business writing you are. So you want to be able to be, as we said, short words, short sentences, short paragraphs.
Great. We have one more question from Kate, and then we'll continue with the program. Kate O'Brien would like to know, would you suggest a few engaging opening phrases for an email?
What are some compelling statements to open an email? Yeah. Well, certainly a question to get somebody curious. A callback to a previous conversation would be helpful. Just, something that is engaging. Starting off with talking about the weather is not too engaging, particularly if it's a business kind of email. So look for ways to be compelling. Something that will get people to read the next sentence and the next one after that.
Wonderful, thank you. So let's, I think we're good. Let me see if I have one more question. We do. We have one more question from Carla. Carla would like to know, for technical engineering reports, would passive voice be more acceptable than active voice?
This brings up the question of who is your target audience, who are you writing for? In academia, passive voice is much more prevalent than it is in business writing. I have a friend who's a PhD, and I was helping her with a journal article for her profession, and the guidelines for that particular publication demanded passive voice. I was in agony because I wanted to change everything to active, but it would be wise to go and see who the target audience is and what kind of guidelines. If it's a certain publication that has certain guidelines, that would give you the answer to that question.
Perfect. Wonderful. Well, let's keep going. And again, thank you so much for those of you in the audience, Amy, Captain Jim, Kate, and Carla. If any the rest of you have questions, please feel free to type them into the chat box or raise your hand, and we'll get to you as we can through the program. So, Barbara, let's go ahead and continue.
Now, you see on your screen something that says blank canvas. Chances are you've been in a situation where you're staring at the computer screen like an artist would stare at a blank canvas and not sure what to do or how to get started. Well, I have a suggestion for you. It's a planning tool, and I call it Set Your Objectives. Now, this is before you write word one. You have this outline, who, what, why, when, where, and how, and work through it in as much detail as you can. So let me just tell you what I have in mind as I use these words. So who is in your target audience? Who is the person that's going to read this? Whether it's an email or a proposal or an article, whatever it is, think about the person who will be reading this. What do you know about them already? What is the pain that they're experiencing? So who are you writing this for? Then there's the what part, the message, the takeaway, the call to action. What do you want your reader to do, think, believe, or remember as a result of reading this piece? I mean, it could be as simple as attend an important meeting, or consider a new point of view, or say it's a credit card company, refund my money. Maybe that's the key takeaway that you're intending here. So then is the why part, the purpose and the benefit. Why do the readers need this information? What's in it for them? Now, take the example of that letter to a credit card company. Well, the benefit for you is to get your money refunded, of course, but what's the benefit to the credit card company? Well, they don't want to lose you as a customer. They don't want to mar their reputation. So think about those kinds of phrases. Include them in your letter so that it's clear that you have some empathy and you want to be as clear as you can that you understand your reader's needs. Then if it's something like a meeting, something that's logistical, be sure to jot down the when and the where, because often, guess what? I get a flyer. Sometimes it forgets to tell me the when and the where. I get the details about an event. Somebody forgot to do the other piece. So you don't want to be that person. You want to actually think that through ahead of time and put that on your outline. And then the how piece, maybe perhaps the most important piece. How do you want your reader to hear you? Polite, apologetic, excited, firm, demanding, laid back, urgent. What is it? What is the tone that you want to come across in whatever it is you're writing? That's all part of communication, correct? So when I do this in a workshop or wordshop, I have people actually take a real-life situation that they're working on, and they fill out this outline, and they do it in great detail. The more detail, the better, because what happens, your brain just gets warmed up, and when you understand where you're going with your ideas, the writing goes faster, easier, smoother. Your brain's already working on this. It's kind of like doing a second or a third draft instead of a raw first draft after you take time to do this planning tool. Now, suppose you've already written that message. I suggest you test it. Ideally, test it with somebody in your target audience if that's possible, if not with a coworker or someone nearby. But have that person read the piece that you just wrote, that blog post, that letter, whatever it is, and ask that person to identify all those elements we just talked about. Who, what, why, when, where, and especially the how. How am I coming across? And if that person is able to feed back to you all the things that you intended, woohoo, that's great. You have done a good job of writing that piece. However, if there are some parts or pieces that aren't really clear and haven't come across very clear, that's very good information. Then you give those parts more attention. And chances are they're the benefits. Continue to beef up the benefits to the reader. Why should they read this? Why should they care? So that's a little exercise that will save time in the long run just by doing the outline first. Moving on, we're going to pursue a parallel path. What does that mean? Well, we don't want to let a mixed bag of parts of speech wiggle into our writing. Here's an example. His attitude makes a difference in changing, succeeding, and when he wants to move on. Oop, what just happened there? We set up an expectation, changing, succeeding, and then we kind of went off in the distance. We didn't keep a parallel path. So my recommendation to smooth out your writing is to keep it on a parallel path by using the same part of speech. His attitude makes a difference in changing, succeeding, and moving on. Changing, succeeding, moving on. So we're building a rhythm and a cadence that sounds right. It just sounds right. Here's another example. I'm traveling to New York City to shop, to visit friends, and maybe attending a conference would be good too. So we set it up, and then we kind of got off on the wrong track with that example. Better, let's line it all up. I'm traveling to New York City to shop, visit friends, and possibly attend a conference. Now we're walking a parallel path. Do you see how much stronger that is? Boy, oh boy, and as an editor, I'm changing that all the time. It's amazing. So look for ways to add rhythm and cadence by using this technique. Also, you may have noticed we're plugging into the power of 3 right from kindergarten. Oh my gosh, that's what we've been learning. Stop, look, and listen. Hop, skip, and jump. These are the kind of cadences that people in our society are used to. We like them. We use them a lot. Think about musicians and the names of bands that we remember. Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Earth, Wind, and Fire. Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young. Oops. It's a good thing Young dropped out because Crosby, Stills, and Nash sounds much stronger. It taps into the power of 3. How about in business? Take a look at websites and billboards and brochures. You'll see marketing pieces all the time. Use the power of 3. Reduce, reuse, recycle. Buy it, sell it, love it. This is my favorite. Grace, space, pace. You can just see the jaguar. Whoa. So can you think of examples of books that tap into the power of 3? If you can, jot them down. So one I think you may have thought of is Eat, Pray, and Love. Eat, Pray, Love. There we're tapping into the power of 3. She didn't add a 4th or a 5th, even though she might have. Eat, Pray, Love just kind of works, and people remember that. Another one is Deep, Dark, Down. Oh my gosh, that was so powerful as a title, in my opinion. I read it about 6 months ago, and the movie came out about 3 months ago, The 33, about the Chilean miners, 33 miners stuck underground. And boy, oh boy, it was chilling to learn their story for sure. But what really got to me was the title, Deep, Dark, Down. So play with it for your own. Find ways to use the power of 3 in what you're doing. Moving on to punctuate and proofread with fresh eyes. Now, I needed a picture of eyes, and this came from the book cover of one of my clients. How about that? And the message is right on the money, with new eyes. So let's look at our writing through new eyes. Here's a punctuation quiz, and let's kind of work through this together. Before it's time for lunch, take care of the recently sent emails. Take a second and look at that carefully. How would you change the punctuation? Well, first of all, ITS needs an apostrophe because it means it is. If you can say it is, then we need an apostrophe. Also, we replaced that semicolon with a comma, and let me tell you why. Semicolons are used for 2 equally weighted sentences, one on either side. So the sentence before has to have a noun and a verb, a subject and a verb. The sentence afterwards has to have a subject and a verb. They could stand alone as 2 sentences, but the semicolon shows that there's a relationship between the 2. In this case, we do not have 2 equally weighted sentences. We have a clause. Before it's time to go for lunch, comma, modifies the rest of the sentence. Take care of the recently sent emails. So that's why we use a comma instead of a semicolon here. Before it's time for lunch does not stand alone as a complete sentence. Now the other piece you'll notice is we took out the hyphen after recently. Now the rules for hyphenation, well, gosh, they're all over the map. But there is one strong, powerful rule, and that is no hyphen after ly words. You probably see that often, but it's not correct. So if you're using ly hyphen something, take out the hyphen, not with ly words. Here's another one that looks at punctuation when there's a parentheses. Everyone has a place in this world. Robert said that repeatedly. Or everyone has a place in this world, a phrase repeated often. So here's the distinction here. Everyone has a place in the world is a complete sentence, and what goes in the parentheses is also a complete sentence. Robert said that repeatedly, period. So the period goes inside the parentheses. By comparison, in the second example, a phrase repeated often, kind of modifies the main sentence, and it's a bit of an aside. Often parentheses is like a whisper. You're saying it as an aside. In this case, it doesn't stand alone. So we need to show that by putting the period outside of the parentheses rather than inside. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, we could go on and on with punctuation, but I will not do that. I have a 3-page summary of what punctuation to use when, and I call it my punctuation guide. So if you would like a PDF of this 3-page summary, I'm happy to send it to you. Just request it through email, and I will send that off to you immediately. So proofreading with fresh eyes. Help me fill in the blanks here. When we proofread something, there's very specific things we can do to make sure we're doing it well. So you want to reread what you wrote at least how many times? Well, the minimum I would suggest is 3 times. 10, 20, 30, a million times, whatever it takes to feel like you've done it and done it well and gotten it right. But don't just be one and done. You've got to reread it, got to reread your own stuff. Have at least how many other people read it? Again, a minimum of 2, but 3 would be great, 10 would be great, whatever it takes. Make sure other people, like we said earlier, are checking up that you are saying what you intend to say, because that's the whole point of communication. Also, you want to reread only after you've let it sit for how long? Now, some of you might say 2 to 3 minutes, but I would say minimum 10 to 20 minutes. You think you've finished, you're ready to press the send button, take a deep breath instead, walk away, get a glass of water, come on back, do something else, and then look at it with fresh eyes before you press that send button. I guarantee you'll find things in there that you did not realize were there, and you'll also see opportunities to make it better. See, there's a printer here on this page. You want to print it out and read your sentences out loud. We talked a bit about this, but your ear can be an excellent editor. It can catch things that your eyes don't necessarily catch. So if you have the luxury of time, print it out, go somewhere else, put your feet up, pretend that you're looking for those gremlins and you're going to find them. It's a hunt. And again, at the same time, you need to make it better. Also, take off your writer's hat and consider your reader's viewpoint. There it is. So we've got the writer's hat that you just wrote that piece. Now, again, have some distance. Go back and look at it from the reader's point of view. That will make a huge difference. Our last segment is called Match the Word to the Meaning. And as Liz mentioned, I've been on a crusade for a lot of years, and it's come together in a book that I've created called Word Tripperz, the ultimate source for choosing the perfect word when it really matters. So what the heck is a word tripper? Well, here's an example of 2 words that often get confused in the written and the spoken word. You've heard people say, consider the amount of stores or the amount of muffins or the amount of whatever. Actually, these should be numbers, not amounts. Because, and here's the hint, if you can quantify or count the objects, you would use number instead of amount. Therefore, the correct way to say it would be, consider the number of stores or the number of muffins. Pay attention, because you'll hear this wrong a lot, but if you can count it, use the word number. If it's more cerebral, use the word amount. You can count dollars, but you can't really count money. So you would use number for dollars and amount for money. Convince and persuade. Now you can convince someone of an idea, but you haven't persuaded them until they've taken action. It's correct to say, he convinced me it would taste good, but it's incorrect to say, he convinced me to taste it. Rather, He persuaded me to taste it. So you've actually completed the action when somebody has taken it, when you've persuaded somebody and they've taken action. A subtle distinction, but an important one. How about advice and advise? Advice with a C is a noun. Advise with a S is a verb. So the advice you receive is only as good as the people who advise you. Remember the difference by thinking of the word ice, which is a noun. Advice and ice with a C. It's not an action, it's not a verb. So that's how you tell the difference. And my book is full of these, I tell you. That and which. I remember back in the corporate world, I had a supervisor who changed every that in my sentence to which. And I was bound and determined to learn and understand the difference, at least according to the American style of writing. So you'd use that when the phrase that follows is essential to the meaning of the sentence. For example, we provide guides that serve as an alternative to our programs. Alternatively, we would use which when the phrase gives information but isn't critical to understanding the sentence. So we would say the self-teaching guides, which complement services we offer, provide an alternative to our programs. If we dropped the which phrase, it would still make sense. The self-teaching guides provide an alternative to our programs. Hopefully that's clear, that you know when to use that versus which. And as you notice, there's a comma before which, but no comma before that. So that's a bit of a signal too. So gosh, there are 390 of these pesky pairings, just like the ones we went through in the book Word Tripperz. If you want to know more about that, go to wordtripperz.com or even sign up for the e-zine while you're there. So let's do a quick recap. You want to whack wordiness as often as you can to get rid of that word clutter that gets in the way. You want to set your objectives before you write the first sentence. Get clear in your mind what you want to say so you will say it more clearly and concisely when it comes time to put it on paper. You want to pursue a parallel path to add rhythm and cadence to your writing, and also tap into the power of three for that same reason. People like threes in our society. Reminder to ask for a punctuation guide, editor@barbaramcnichol.com. Always proofread with fresh eyes. Proofread is the operative word here. There's many, many ways to proofread. You can, all of the ones we talked about today and more, you can do, and make sure you get the gremlins out of there. Also, I'd like to suggest you make Word Tripperz your best friend. It's a great resource for finding the word that really matters. If you go to my website, barbaramcnichol.com, there is a report there for you called Top Techniques to Strengthen Your Writing. And some of the things we talked about today are there for you in written form as a really good reminder of what we talked about today. And when you ask for that report, you also are signing up for my e-zine. Comes out every month. It's called Add Power to Your Pen. And basically, that's what I do. I help you strengthen your writing. Also, you'll see a tab that says Word Tripperz, and Word Tripper of the Week is on that tab if you choose to sign up for that. You'll see more about the workshops and the webinars that I offer, and then on the editing page, you'll find out about my services for nonfiction book editing. So just another word about the workshop. I do a full workshop that's 4 hours. I can do a mini version of that that's shorter. I can customize it for your group. I can actually build in a bonus, which I've done for clients, and that is do pre and post editing. So you or your people would send me samples of your own writing that you do every day, and I would take a look at it, give you written feedback, and point out the things that will be most meaningful to you personally when we actually get together for that workshop. So that's a bonus that I do offer if you're interested. So another good time for questions.
Wonderful. If you have a question and you'd like to just type it into the chat box, that would be really, really wonderful. Just to emphasize, Barbara's offering you a couple of different things. She talked earlier in the presentation about the punctuation guide, and you can get that by emailing her at editor@barbaramcnichol.com. You can also visit the website wordtripperz.com for some fabulous and wonderful tools, resources, and information. And don't forget, she also mentioned that there's a report on techniques to strengthen your writing by visiting barbaramcnichol.com. So again, if there's any questions, we'll just sit here for a minute. Oh, looks like we have a couple of questions. Carl says, really excellent, one of the better webinars. Thank you so very much. Well, Carl, you are so very welcome. We're very fortunate to have Barbara here with us, and thank you for the great feedback.
Actually, Liz, I have a question for everyone listening.
Yeah.
And that is, from what you heard today, which tip caught your attention the most? Which tip is likely to be implemented next for you? I'd love the feedback on what really resonated with you. Are people typing in their answers? That would be cool.
Yeah, so whacking wordiness, that's one that's come up. Great. Thank you so much, Carl, for that. The power of 3 words from Captain Jim.
Woohoo.
Let's see what else. Wobbly words, setting your objectives. Wonderful. Thank you, Deborah. Thank you, Susan. Keeping sentences less than 21 words. Thanks, Amy. Great to hear from you today. Wobbly words, but really all of them. So all of the tips that you offered. So wobbly words primarily, but really all of the things that you offered to share with the group. So wonderful.
It's all about making every word in the sentence count. And by that I mean count toward, is it saying what you intended to say? Is what you wrote what you meant to write? And as you go back and reread and proofread, those are the kinds of things you're asking yourself, making every word count, really.
Yeah, so thank you, Kate. Let's see, Samantha says waiting 20 minutes before sending an email. I absolutely love that. Eileen says wobble words, decide to and who or which clauses. And Kate chimes in again, the critical eye is really helpful.
Hey, cool.
Yeah. So lots of really good, great feedback. Wonderful. One more thing. Carl would like to know, do you have an editing fee based on the number of pages, or do you use some other formula?
My editing fees are a combination of total number of words we start with. I can give you an editing plan and a project fee. So it's custom work. It's very hard to tell you what my pricing is because I do go through this process to help me evaluate and also to help you see how I would approach your work. It's very much a partnership.
Wonderful. Well, Barbara, on behalf of Direct Pay, thank you again so much for sharing your brilliance with us. For those of you who are on the session with us, I encourage you to follow through, connect with Barbara via email, visit her websites, look her up via social media and find out how she can help you add power to your pen and to create a better version of your copy so that you're attracting the audience that you are most destined to serve. For those of you who are listening to the recording, thank you so much for joining us after. We're glad that you could participate and contribute. And on behalf of Direct Pay, once again, thanks everyone for a great session today. We look forward to having you participate on an upcoming session, and we encourage you to visit the website directpay.com to learn more about the upcoming webinars and to find out more about the programs and services that they offer for merchant card services. Thanks everyone. Make it a great day. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.